Before we get started, I have a quick public safety announcement to make. The primary exits for this facility are towards the back and sides of the room. Please be aware that the closest exit might be different than the entrance that you used to enter the room. March 4th was a tragic day for our community, and I think it's imperative that we acknowledge the weight that this event bears on all of us emotionally. I invite you to join me for a moment of silence for Ronald Leroy Heiston Jr., who lost his life due to the tragic Route 15 crash. Thank you. We also want to acknowledge the family members displaced by this fire and other residents who also faced property damage from the crash. You all have our greatest sympathies. Today we are gathered because the city, county, and state are committed to helping our community recover. Panelists join us from various agencies, which I will introduce in just a moment. My name is Lauren Paulette, and I am the Community Engagement Specialist for the City of Frederick. Joining us in the room today are City of Frederick Mayor Michael O'Connor, County Executive Jessica Fitzwater, County Council Member MC Keegan Ayer, County Council President Brad Young, Alderman Ben McShane, Alderman Derek Shackelford, Alderman Kelly Russell, and Michael Outlaw representing Delegate Karen Simpson. I apologize if I missed any other officials in the room. Apart from the elected officials, we are honored to have special guests joining us on this panel discussion. Here to my left, at the far left of the stage, is Tom Coe, a 29-year veteran of the fire service. He currently serves as the fire chief of the Frederick County Division of Fire and Rescue Services, where he has worked for the past 23 years. His division provides fire and emergency medical services to citizens and visitors of Frederick County with 1,100 career and volunteer responders from 30 fire rescue stations. Next is Christopher Ralston, the program manager of the Maryland Department of the Environment's Oil Control Program. He has been with the department since April 2009 and previously served as the chief of the Oil Control Program Remediation Division. Prior to working for Maryland, Mr. Ralston was an environmental consultant for 10 years, specializing in petroleum remediation projects. In his current capacity, he is responsible for directing and coordinating MDE's oil pollution control and storage tank management activities. Next is Andrew Radcliffe Jr., the district engineer at the Maryland Department of Transportation State Highway Administration for District 7, which includes Carroll, Frederick, and Howard counties. He is a licensed professional engineer in the state of Maryland with 20 years of experience in the engineering industry, including over 12 years at the State Highway Administration for District 7. He is a lifelong resident of Frederick and lives here with his wife and 2 children. Lastly, we have Lieutenant Kevin Meyer, who has been with the Frederick Police Department for 16 years and is the commander of the training and personnel units. He was the on-call commander on the day of the tanker accident and responded in to coordinate city police resources at the command post for the fallout from the incident that came into our city. With so many agencies at play here, I think it's incumbent on us to dive into the individual areas of responsibility each of our agencies have with regard to this crash. Since fire and rescue was the lead responder, we'll start with you, Chief Coe. Can you briefly walk us through the day for Frederick County Division of Fire and Rescue?
So thank you for attending tonight. On that day, on the Route 15 incident, the Frederick County Division of Fire and Rescue Services was dispatched at 12 noon by our Emergency Communications Center for both a reported house fire and a tanker explosion on Route 15 in the area of Rosemont Avenue. By our area of responsibility, the Frederick County Division of Fire and Rescue Services provides fire, emergency medical services, and initial hazardous materials mitigation response to the incident. It was a very complex incident that involved various agencies from both the city, the county, and the state, as well as some federal resources. The Frederick County Division of Fire and Rescue Services provided the initial fire suppression for the tanker and the structures that were involved, as well as the vehicles that were involved on Apple Avenue. We ensured that emergency medical services was provided, and then quickly transitioned upon the extinguishment of the fire to control the hazardous runoff that came from the tanker truck. We coordinated that response with all of the allied agencies that responded, and then transitioned the incident over to the Maryland State Police for investigation of the collision, as well as the Maryland Department of the Environment for cleanup, long-term cleanup supervision of the incident.
So, Mr. Ralston, if you could explain how Maryland Department of the Environment is playing a role in this response.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Again, thanks for coming out this evening. So our department really has two main roles with response to this incident. The first was to help with the first responders. Our emergency response division was called out, requested to assist with the cleanup and control activities related to the gasoline that had leaked out of the exploded tanker and had moved into the storm drain issue. So our emergency response division deployed 5 units to assist with the first responders from the fire departments that were involved. They set up booms at some of the outfalls of the storm drains to help contain the fuel that was emanating through the storm drains. They contracted with some vacuum truck companies to come and help suck up any of the oil that had released from the tanker truck to offload any of the oil or gasoline in the tanker truck that had not yet ignited and was still on the trailer. They also flushed water and through the storm drain and sucked all that up as well during the process of the cleanup. So that was kind of the first immediate response. Secondarily, we oversee the responsible party for the discharge of the oil, which is the tanker truck company, Sheets Incorporated. They are the parent company of that tanker truck company. So we are working with them to oversee the cleanup of any of the soils, the storm drain, any of the materials that were impacted by the fuel. So they are actively doing that. They've done some work last week in the median area where the immediate impact of the tanker truck was, and they still have some work to do, and we're overseeing that work currently.
Thank you, Mr. Ralston. So, Mr. Radcliffe, can you shed some light on MDOT's initial response to the crisis and then continued efforts since then?
Sure. Good evening. First, speaking on behalf of all State Highway, we're very saddened by the loss of the driver. One death on any of our highways is too many, and the extreme property damage that was experienced subsequent to the crash. So we wear many hats before, during, and after the incident as the owners of the road. During the incident that day, our emergency response technician was first on site at 12:04 and began coordinating with our statewide operations center to deploy additional state highway assets. In an incident like this, or any crash, our job as state highway is to support our partners in emergency response and law enforcement to make the scene safe for them in terms of closing traffic lanes, or in this case, closing 15 in both directions and detouring traffic. We provided that support they needed to extinguish the fire and assess the scene. We also, during the afternoon, we mobilized our tree contractor to be ready once the scene was cleared to remove the tree that was struck and any other brush to safely reopen the road. The same afternoon, we did a camera inspection of all the storm drain due to the fire that emanated in the storm drain to make sure it was safe before we reopened the road, as well as inspecting the sign structure and deploying the sand truck to assist in final cleanup. We helped reopen US 15 southbound around 2:30 in the afternoon and US 15 northbound around 11 o'clock at night. So outside of the response that day, our other main role is the engineering side of things. After any serious crash, our engineering team performs a full review of the assets, including signs, pavement markings, geometry, site distance, pavement condition, guardrail, and any other assets we may have. usually with the police report in hand, because that sheds some important light on the circumstances of the crash. We had so many personnel on scene, and due to the serious nature of this crash and the gap it kind of left behind with the removal of the tree, we've tried to expedite the review. We worked with our statewide offices to gather the data we needed to look at an interim, quick solution. So what we did come up with recently, and we're going to move to install as early as Sunday night, is a traffic barrier guardrail that will extend from the bridge over US 15 over 7th Street, along northbound down along the ramp to the entrance ramp to Rosemont. We worked with the community then, after the guardrail is installed, to put in a privacy fence to help with the screening from US 15 and give them some privacy back. Long term, in the fall, MDOT was excited to announce that with federal funds, we were able to fund the US 15 widening project. That will add a third lane in each direction of US 15 by widening to the median. And what that will also do is look at the reasonable and feasibleness of noise barrier along 15 throughout all these communities that are close to the road, including Apple Avenue. We expect that to be in construction in fall of 2026, and we expect these interim measures to help bridge that gap. Finally, I just want to publicly give my sincere gratitude to the city for hosting this important conversation, and to all of my partners across all levels of government, City of Frederick, Frederick Police Department, Frederick County Fire and Rescue, Maryland Department of Environment, Maryland State Police, our mayor, county council, our state delegation, our county executive. I had a lot of people reaching out to me, and this just shows how much I love this community. The theme was like, how can we help? How can we help you get to a solution? There was no finger pointing. It was all coming together, and that's really why I love living here.
I'd like to echo Mr. Ratcliffe's sentiments of unity. Every agency has been quite helpful in putting together this forum and communicating with our residents. So thank you to all of the agencies that you have mentioned, and we'll revisit them in the past. But thank you, Mr. Radcliffe. Lieutenant Meyer, can you share more about FPD, Frederick Police Department's role the day of the incident?
Sure. I feel like we should have ended with you, though. That was... So anytime something significant rolls into the city of Frederick, we obviously are going to get called out there. Our primary role that day was traffic direction and pedestrian direction. So if any of you were caught in traffic that day, you're welcome, and we're sorry. So we coordinate with DFRS. They let us know how far out traffic needs to be, how far out people need to be, and then after the fact, we're learning now that we need to up our patrols there, but we patrolled the scene after the fact. Even though the road is closed, it's not closed off to pedestrian traffic, so you'll see a lot more of us in that area.
Thank you. So, Mr. Radcliffe, I'm pleased to hear that your office is working on installing a guardrail and within the week as an interim solution to protect residents on Apple Ave. Looking further into the future, how can the upcoming Route 15 project address some of the concerns we've heard from folks with regard to residential safety?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So as part of the 15 widening project, which I touched on a little bit before, the design, which is just beginning, is going to look at the reasonableness and feasibleness of adding a noise barrier along 15 to protect the communities that are close to the road from noise pollution and give them some privacy from US 15. It will also assess the need for additional traffic safety barrier in front of the noise barrier. And just another element to the project is not just the third lane in the median, but if you can envision all of our ramps, the acceleration and deceleration lanes that are a little bit short, those will all be connected to be one continuous lane. If you think about what we did recently from Maryland 26 and Mater Avenue. So there'll be more of those continuous lanes to decrease the friction created by traffic getting off and on, and maybe even coming to sudden stops in the acceleration lane. So that will also help with flow and safety through the community.
And then I have another question for you as well. What strategies or measures have other communities taken to protect residential property on a highway corridor? Just examples of what perhaps other cities have done or employed.
It's very similar to kind of what I talked about, the long-term solutions with looking at noise barriers and looking at different technology noise barriers. I was recently brought into the loop of a new product that it's not just a noise barrier, but it also is can protect against traffic collisions. So typically our current noise barriers need guardrail in front of them. That's a product we're considering. But it's a lot. It's the noise barrier, it's the guardrail that we're going to do in the interim. That's typical for communities that are close to highways such as this.
Great, thank you. So We'll move on to Mr. Ralston next. Many residents have approached us wondering about the environmental impact of an event like this. What are the environmental concerns, if any, for this crash? And Mr. Ralston, we'll start with you from the perspective of the Maryland Department of the Environment.
Great. Yeah, no, that's a very good question. So the immediate impact, obviously, the explosion, the heat impact coming from that, that's very damaging. Obviously, it's going to dissipate quickly. The more long-lasting issues are dealing with the fuel that was released and where that gets to in the environment, both during the kind of immediate release, but also the pathways that fuel can travel in, and whether that's assisted by, measures taken to put out the fires, whether they're, foams, waters, et cetera, that are used. It's going to help mobilize that fuel. Obviously, you got to do those things to put the fire out, so that's understood. And that's part of why our emergency response division is usually called out to these types of situations to help deploy oil absorbent booms or other materials in places where at storm drain outfalls, streams, et cetera, to help containerize and contain any of that fuel that might escape through those obvious avenues, or where possible to block off those storm drains if you can. In this situation, fuel got into the storm drains almost immediately, and as I was understood, was also on fire, traveling through the storm drains and into some of the outfalls, into the park where the Carroll Creek bike path is and the museum, et cetera. So those are some of the immediate concerns, is where does the fuel get to? Does it get onto private property, public areas? Does it seep into the ground? And so how far? Fortunately, in this situation, everybody is on public water with the city of Frederick, so we're not immediately concerned about groundwater contamination and that getting into somebody's private supply well. That's in other areas of the state, that's a very immediate concern. Fortunately, that was not one of the issues here with this situation. However, we do have soil contamination that had to be dealt with. That's already underway. There'll be some more work done tomorrow dealing with the storm drains, and we've had some discussion with some of the residents. We want to make sure that the responsible party for the discharge of oil is actively dealing with those situations. So we're going to have some more follow-up conversations tomorrow with the Sheets folks and in the field tomorrow. So once we get those things squared away, really excavation and removal of the impacted soils, that's the main issue to deal with this type of situation.
Thank you, Mr. Ralston. And I have a couple more follow-up questions for you. Can you summarize the primary stakeholders in the cleanup efforts and elaborate more how you're partnering with the City of Frederick's Department of Public Works to contain this?
Yeah, so Sure, thank you. Our main contact with the responsible party is Sheets Incorporated. So Matt Cutshaw is one of their, he's the senior project manager dealing with overseeing all the contractors they're hiring to do this excavation and restoration work. My colleague Nick in the stands there, he is interfacing and helping usher and overseeing in the field the work that Sheets is doing and the contractors they're using. They have, I think, 3 or 4 different contractors that are involved doing various activities, whether it's kind of a general environmental consulting oversight, whether it's excavation, it's work with the storm drain. So they have specialists coming in to deal with these different facets of the cleanup. And they have a separate contractor dealing with the soil disposal. So there's 4 or 5 different entities that are involved from that aspect of it. Obviously, the storm drains, the properties, we're working with the city, Department of Public Works, we're working with SHA, and we're, I believe, working with maybe the police department on some of the traffic control where necessary. I think that was some of the issue last week with the excavation. So So far, we've had very excellent cooperation with all facets that have been involved with the cleanup activities, and I have no reason to believe that's going to stop.
Yes, and then can you and perhaps other panelists maybe clarify the difference between a storm drain, a sewer? I know we've had a lot of residents reach out with questions on drinking water contamination. You mentioned that the residents are on public water, so that's not a concern. But maybe just for the viewing audience to just clarify the difference between those different elements of built infrastructure.
Yeah, I can take that. So the storm drain functions, it takes the rainwater off the road and channels it to a certain point, sometimes a stormwater control facility. Sewer is what comes out of your house with the toilets, with the drains, takes it to a wastewater treatment facility from the city, and then the water pipes are what flows the clean water back into the home. So the storm, you often sometimes hear storm sewer even get combined. The storm drain and sewer are two separate things. Storm drain takes the water from the rain, anything that washes off the roads, and collects it and controls it to a certain discharge point, and sewer is a controlled discharge of the homes into a wastewater treatment facility.
Alrighty. Okay, so next, I would like for us to move on to our audience Q&A. I'd like for us to start this conversation with some general guidelines for productive discussion. Obviously, this is a safe place to share experiences, so please feel free to speak openly and ask questions. At the same time, let's be mindful of one another and keep this Q&A session civil and respectful for all those that are involved. I hope we can keep the conversation constructive. And so if you'd like to ask a question to our panelists, feel free to walk up to one of the microphones in the front of the room. And we'll alternate.
Hi there, Lee Redmond, Schley Avenue. I've heard talk about putting a guardrail up next to Apple Avenue. What is being done about the southbound? Because this tragedy could have very easily happened on the southbound as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. The immediate concern right now is getting the guardrail up along Apple, which we'll be doing as early as Sunday night. The other step is we're going to take a look at the whole of 15 through the city of Frederick to see if we have similar comparable situations that we might need to take mitigation measures on until the bigger project comes through. So we'll keep the public informed of that review.
Good evening. I live on Wilson Place and am grateful for all of the information that you guys have provided this evening and the opportunity to keep us all informed, because I think everybody had different reactions to it, but all of them I think would be ones of concern and the level of concern. I suppose what my question really is in light of the fact that the Fairview community further south on 15 has had a big barrier sound wall since before I came to Frederick in the early 70s. So it's always struck me as an accident waiting to happen. And the priorities of building the middle strip before putting in sound barriers, to me, seems a little bit like putting the cart in front of the horse. That these two communities on either side of 15 have had to endure safety concerns and noise pollution for years, and it would be helpful to know that that is a big concern, a primary concern, before putting in another lane of traffic. So, thank you very much.
No, thank you for the question. Just to clarify, the noise mitigation would be part of the widening project. So they're one and the same, linked together. One wouldn't come before the other, they would come together. The wall near Fairview Avenue is a privately owned wall that was built with the developer of that adjacent property. I can't remember what it was called.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for all the information. I live on Biggs, so we're the southbound backing up to 15. It was this, I live in the 600 block, so we were kind of one block up. It was the scariest thing I've ever seen. I was in DC on 9/11. This was scarier and far closer to my house. I didn't know what to tell my kids. It was really, really, really terrifying. And the one thing that I felt confident about the whole day was just the tremendous emergency response. The fire department, the city police, the county police, the state police, all of the other emergency responders, having seen the fiery cloud over the backyard, and then having it gone within an hour was astounding to me. So well done, and I'm certainly sorry for the driver who lost his life and for the family who lost their home and was displaced and for all the other damage. But I very much felt like that was going to potentially be the day that we all didn't get out of our neighborhood. So thank you. I have been around in local government long enough to know that we got to wait for, assessments to be done for sound and safety walls. And there's got to be studies. The money is there, it's approved, right? The highway project will go on. And I'd like to ask a couple of things, and I think I probably need to be asking them of both city and county government right now. And the first is, there's still a lot of looking around. There's still a guardrail to be built on the Apple Avenue side. There's still, assessment of all kinds of safety issues that were already there. But in the meantime, can we slow down the traffic? Can we just say, starting at 26 until we have this sorted out? We know that it's not safe. We've seen that it's not safe. So starting at 26, slow down that traffic to 40 miles an hour, enforce it, make everybody go slower in the meantime. Second of all, so that's one piece, and I'd ask you for the opportunity to share comments, and I certainly will be engaged. And I'll be counting on our city and county government and our state delegation to work together to keep us safe, which is our basic requirement. Thank you.
Before you move on, Mr. Radcliffe, I want to give our elected officials an opportunity to respond to the comments.
Thank you, Ms. Barrett, and thank you for just including us. I just wanted to let everyone know we do have a letter in draft form already that the mayor and I are going to send, and we're running it by the state delegation so that we can, at least the District 3 delegation, which is the district that this section of 15 is in, that we can send a unified message to the state on some of the things that have been brought up this evening, including making sure that there are temporary safety measures on both sides of 15, as was mentioned, because we know that while the immediate need, because of the tree not being there, is very significant, but that there are other portions that also do not have any barrier right now. We haven't sent it yet because of this meeting being scheduled and wanting to make sure we are here to listen to see if there are other requests from the community that we want to make sure that we include. So we are listening tonight so that we can continue working on that draft and making sure that we have a unified message to send to the state.
Thank you, County Executive, and Mayor O'Connor will also.
And I would add that an evaluation of the speed limit in that corridor is absolutely appropriate in light of what has happened. So as we hear the conversation tonight, we talk about how we're going to refine this letter to make sure that the request that we make to the state is the most appropriate one. This is exactly the kind of information that we're hoping to collect. So we appreciate it very much.
Mr. Radcliffe, would you like to add to that?
Sure, yeah, just echo the mayor and county executive. Thank you for the feedback. That's why I'm here too. And I'll be sure to take that feedback back to our project team in terms of the timing of the walls relative to the widening of 15. And the speed limit is something we can certainly study, and I can find the best forum, but we have some really good literature on our website about how state highways sets safe and realistic speed limits. It kind of gives you the background there, but we can absolutely review the speed through the corridor as well.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bob Smart. I live in Middletown, so I'm not in the immediate neighborhood. But like almost everybody else in this region, I drive down 15 multiple times a week, sometimes multiple times a day. 15, as we know it, was designed about 70 years ago. It replaced 15, which at the time ran down Market Street. And at that time it was a through road outside the generally built up area. However, over those 70 years Frederick has grown. It is no longer a through road that takes traffic out of the built up area. It is more realistically an urban suburban collector road, which is used to go to shopping, appointments, and for local traffic really. And we're mixing that with long haul trucks and such that are headed north and west. I mean, they hit 70 out. I think that there is nothing realistically that can be done to expand 15 enough to make it handle the load that will be expected by even the time the current improvements are planned. I think the state should really be looking at building an eastern bypass around Frederick that would generally begin somewhere east of the airport, east of the Monocacy River on 70, go north, and end up somewhere about Biggs Ford Road. I'd like it to go farther out, but I think that would be a little bit tough. But if you look at a map, it would actually be cut the amount of mileage a vehicle would have to drive to go from Baltimore to Thurmont or Gettysburg, because it's one side of a triangle. And it's time to look at a completely new solution for through traffic. That corridor along River is now, cross my fingers, still relatively unbuilt. There are no big subdivisions in there. If we wait 5 years, there will be. And then it will be impossible to build such a road. I think it's time that the county and the state get together and look at a project that will take 10 to 15 years. I testified at a hearing that was held by the State Roads at Urbana High School in either 2001 or 2002, talking about widening I-270 and the 15 corridor up beyond Haywood Road. And that was when Haywood Road still intersected 15 and had a regular series of major accidents at it. At the time, I said that I would probably retire before anything was really done on any of that section of road. I retired 8 years ago. And 15 still, it's not necessarily, I don't view it as anybody's fault. We all live here, we've all hit more traffic along there. It's growth. And we need to look at big solutions to admit that that road is no longer a through road that is designed, back when it was designed, semi-trailers were 40 feet long, if I remember. They're now 53 feet. That makes ramps that much harder. No matter how much you connect the ramps, we've only got so much distance between the exits on 15. There's only so much we can do. And for through traffic, you don't need exits at every road. Build out there where there's nothing left, maybe put 1 or 2 exits, and you've got a 10-mile stretch that will get things around Frederick and get them on their way up to the north, up towards Harrisburg, wherever the trucks are. I mean, out of Port of Baltimore is one of the major ports in the U.S. There's traffic coming out of there a lot. I think Harley-Davidson trucks in particular coming down 15 and turning left and getting on 70 and heading towards Baltimore. Get that stuff off of 15 through Frederick. We don't need it. The truck drivers sure don't want it. They would just as soon get on a road that doesn't have any ramps at all. As far as the incident itself, I want to thank emergency services from the county, from the city, from Fort Detrick, and Camp David. They all worked together and minimized what could have been a downright disastrous situation. And that is to everybody's credit, because this could have been downright disastrous. And the next one might be. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Dean Herron. I live on Color Avenue, which is 1 block away from Apple. First, thank you very much for having the meeting tonight. And somewhat echoing the last speaker, I've lived in Frederick for 30 years, and it feels like it's been that long since this has been in the planning stage, 15 expansion. So I'm a little, and just as the last speaker, I remember years ago hearing about a noise barrier. So I'm a little surprised to hear that there still has to be a feasibility study. I don't quite understand why that hasn't already been done. I know conditions change year to year, so you have to update it. But, if you could perhaps explain why would a wall be unfeasible in this particular situation? And I want to make sure that quick things. In the planning stage, I think you should remember to put trees along if you can, that kind of a barrier. It helps with pollution, it helps with noise. And the third thing is, I'm not sure anyone knows exactly how the accident happened, but I know that at that very intersection of Rosemont and 15, I was once almost run off the road by someone not yielding as they entered the highway. And I've noticed more and more cars don't seem to know what yield means. So I don't know how you police that, although I'm very happy to hear there's going to be a continuous lane. But that's not the case everywhere. So I don't know how the police can control yielding, not yielding, but anyway, thank you.
No, thank you for the feedback, and I apologize if my terminology was a little confusing. It's not necessarily a feasibility study. We're in the design phase, so now it's determining like how can we make that wall work, considering the elements on the side of the road, how close the other streets are, how close the homes are, storm drain grades. It's getting to that engineering standpoint, like how can we make it work now? That's why when I talk about feasibleness, so, if that helps.
Anyone else like to respond? All right. Floor is yours.
Hi, my name is Kathy Anderson, and I live on Fairview, which was just a couple blocks up from where the accident was on Saturday. First, I want to say thank you to everyone in emergency services who handled that situation. I just fear that it could have been so much worse. So I very much appreciate everything you did. I don't know where to direct my question, but my question specifically has to do with the city's emergency communications plan. And I am wondering, how does the city plan to improve their emergency communications to the public in situations like this? Because our neighborhood was not adequately informed. We heard and watched and saw the flames and the smokes, and there were many of us who wondered if we need to evacuate. And it was almost an hour before a statement came out of the city, and that statement said where the media was staging and to stay out of the area. And there was nothing specific for the neighbors who actually lived in the area. So I'm just wondering how the city plans on improving their communications in emergencies like this, especially in the neighborhoods that are directly affected.
Thank you, Kathy. We have a few staff members in emergency services for the city present. I'd like to give them an opportunity to respond, and also Mayor Hunter would like to.
Yeah, I think my first notification of this incident, I was not at home at the time that it happened, was a text message that was sent to me by someone who had taken a picture from Fort Detrick. And in that picture, it looked like my house was the house that had exploded. So in that moment, my first instinct was, what's going on? And I think there were a lot of people who were in the same boat, wondering What's going on? Department of Fire and Rescue Services is the lead agency on this. Before the city is going to put out any information, when we don't know what's going on, is to listen and wait for the Department of Fire and Rescue Services to tell us what we need to do. There was no indication in the early moments of that incident that evacuations were necessary. I understand where people's fears lie, but we're waiting for DFRS to give us the information that we need. And my first instructions to our communications team was follow the lead of DFRS. If DFRS puts out information about this incident, since they are first on the scene, the ones who are there, even our police department wasn't on the scene. They were controlling traffic on the perimeter. DFRS was on the scene. We were going to follow their lead on this incident.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the question. And I think it's incredibly important that we really have this discussion this evening. Anytime after an incident, we really try to analyze the performance of our agency, how we work together, and how we can do better next time. Specific to this incident, the first notification from the Division of Fire and Rescue Services came out via social media 42 minutes into the event. And that might seem like an incredibly long time, but what we want to do is provide credible information on what the event is that's occurring. We typically, our initial event handling on Apple Avenue involved making sure the houses that were directly involved and that were in danger were evacuated by those on the scene, right? We contacted the residents that were directly involved, made sure those houses were evacuated. It was quickly determined, because the fire was controlled quickly, that we did not need any additional evacuations. So there was no need to notify the public to make evacuations that weren't necessary based on the early information we had on the incident. So we were very comfortable with that. We do understand that the public does have a general curiosity about what's going on and a general need to know what's going on in their neighborhood. And that first notification came out 42 minutes into the incident. I will defer, the emergency manager for the county, Jack Markey, is here. And the county does have a notification system that they work with the city to send messages out to the public. Again, that day that was not enacted because we did not need the public to take action. But it is a worthy topic to talk about and how you can sign up to receive those notifications. Beyond all of that, we want the public to know that we empower you to make the appropriate, immediate decision for your own safety. And that's probably the biggest take-home message tonight, is that if you don't feel that you're in a safe place, don't wait for somebody to tell you to go somewhere. You're empowered to make that immediate action yourself. So that is kind of the background on the Division of Fire and Rescue Services notification process. Director Markey, I don't know if you want to touch on the county and city's notification processes and how they can sign up to be a part of that.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Jack Markey, I'm the Director of Emergency Management for Frederick County. And Chief Co is referencing our service known as Alert Frederick County. For those residents who are not signed up, you can go to the county's website at www.frederickcountymd.gov/alertfc and register to be on a notification system that is shared access with all of the municipalities in Frederick County. You can sign up there to receive notices about community activities as well as emergency events. With the mobility of most folks through the community and the ubiquity of mobile phones, we find that is the best tool for us to be able to reach out to people when we do have the need to push information. Chief Co correctly describes the challenge in those first minutes of an emergency is to determine what is happening, who is impacted, and set actions in place to provide that protection. And that's always focused from the location of the emergency and then moving outward to ensure the safety of the rest of the community. But we do take the comments and appreciate the comments and the work as a team, as we did that day, to put improvements in place moving forward. So, thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on the emergency, sort of the idea that, I definitely feel enabled to make decisions, but in a moment like that, I think it was, so my street backs to 15, my house backs to 15, and then in front of my house, there was, because we're immediately off of 15, we had all of the traffic from 15 in front of our house, as well as a number of like ambulances and fire trucks staging there or stuck there. So one immediate thing, I think, for the city, in terms of coordinating an incident response and an after action, would be traffic immediately. I know that there were neighbors out trying to actually help get some of the cars off the immediately, the stuff that was on fire on 15 and help them get them off the road. I certainly couldn't have taken my car. I couldn't have put my kids in my car in that situation. There wasn't that option. I certainly could have walked by foot toward Fort Detrick. But then I was also feeling responsible. I have 2 elderly neighbors who live alone, and I didn't necessarily, I made contact with them, and I didn't know how to help them. And I feel like this is a moment where just having a little bit, like I know how incident command works, and I know you guys depend on, the immediate, incident responders to take care of that. But just having a contingency plan from the city, like you guys should go this way if there's ever another, I know an airplane has landed on 15 too. What do we do? I think having a proactive, if you're elderly, if you're disabled, you can go this way, because I do think when you add 2 more lanes to that highway, we're going to have 2 times as many accidents on the map. So thank you.
Hi, I just want to say thank you all very much for everything that you've done during this incident. I do believe that a barrier wall is definitely what is needed, something to protect the houses and to keep the traffic in line. I also believe that we do need to see more police out there. I can say just this past Tuesday, I live on Lee Place, which is on the opposite side of the incident. It literally looked as though my street behind me on Military, every other house was blowing up. It was terrifying. But on this past Tuesday, going on to 15 on Military Road, I was on the road and on the lane, and a car comes flying up behind me, goes in the emergency lane, goes around me, and gets back on 15 in front of me, and then almost caused an accident right there in front of Patrick Street in Jefferson on 15. I don't see the police on 15. Either have the police there or put up the speed cameras and pay for the wall with the speed cameras. Because you get something's got to happen. I cannot believe that a 58-year-old man lost his life with an incident like this. It's just unbelievable, and it will probably take 50 years to get the wall up. So it just needs to be done. Continue the good work.
No, thank you.
Up should be on.
Testing. All right. Thank you for the feedback. The barrier wall and any other permanent safety measures will be part of the evaluation of the corridor project, and we'll look at any other interim improvements we need outside of the guardrail on Apple Avenue with some of the other homes that are close to the road. I will comment on speed cameras. State law only allows speed cameras in school zones and in work zones. The state highway administers the work zone speed camera program. Local law enforcement administers any school zone speed camera program. I fully agree that I think driving even gotten worse since COVID or something. I think speed's worse. I think inattentiveness is worse. It might be a tool we need to add to our toolbox in the future, but for now the law limits us to school zones and work zones for speed cameras. And the barrier and the project, the large corridor project that would include any needed sound wall, traffic barrier, that will be in construction in 2026. That is fully funded.
Isn't this a big emergency? Pass all that up.
But there was a speed camera or a speed trap right there on. There was a speed camera on 50, well, it's actually 70, I guess, because
It's right there at 85 and 70 when they were doing all that construction.
It was a work zone, yes.
Okay, well, you're going to be doing a work zone there just next week. Well, I think you put up a camera, and I would put those guardrails or whatever. I think the guardrails, to be honest with you, is necessary, but I think that the barrier walls is even more necessary because you're protecting their houses. You're also going to protect someone who's going to hit the guardrail that's going to go through it. Then they have the wall that's going to save their life. So if you put up both and those cameras or whatever they're called, I just think that the wall could pay for itself if you have those cameras up. There are so many people speeding on that road, it is incredible. And it's scary. I know a lot of people that will avoid 15 completely because of the traffic and then the speeding. I mean, people go around everyone. I have to get off on Patrick Street to go around and go through a whole other street to get over on Rosemont to get on the Lee Place. Because the traffic, even before the incident, the traffic is just clogged up. I don't know if it's the university, the college. Something right there is just really making everything so congested that it's just not, it's not safe.
Yeah, and as far as the speed cameras in the work zones, we have pretty rigid standards we have to follow in terms of the signing in advance, in terms of the placement of the camera with the trucks behind the barrier wall, and in terms of the test period they have to be out for to issue warnings. We are working to add more flexibility in that because, you know, I totally agree with you. We have many work zones across the state that are much smaller and more mobile, and we'd like the ability to move those cameras with the work zones. You know, that week was awful for State Highway, not just because of the crash on 15, but that Tuesday before, I almost lost 5 employees when a commercial dump truck entered our work zone on 15 near Mount Zion Road. Thank God they were all on the side of the road because it completely demolished one of our dump trucks and one of our crew trucks. If anyone had been in the truck, they would have been killed. So we're looking at ways we can leverage some of that technology to help protect other areas of the road too.
I mean, don't even have it real. Make people think you're doing it. I mean, just flash that light, you know, do something so that.
Understood.
I mean, it's something really needs to be done before there, I mean, because there's going to be many, many more accidents there. On all of 15, actually. It's just not that one little area. It's East Patrick. There was an accident there last night at East Patrick. I mean, it's just, it's a killer of a road, I guess is what I would say. And it's something that really needs to be done.
Thank you. We're going to work to make it better. Thanks for the feedback.
You and I have met before, sir, and you probably don't remember me. You were at, they were the display tables showing the expansion for the Route 15. I'm with a group called Trains Not Tolls, and we would like to invite the public to actually think about helping you not build roads, but actually build us an extra track. We got 2 trains in the morning, 2 trains at night. If we had more MARC service, it'd be less cars on the road. Less cars on the road, less speeding on the road, less accidents on the highway. Yeah, I see you shaking your head. You remember me now.
No, those are all it's a very valid point. In reducing the congestion, but transit's a big part of that as well.
And we have the tracks.
And I know the county and the city support that in their priority letters to get funding through our Maryland Transit Administration for expansion projects of the rail system. I think that can be an important part of the piece of the puzzle.
So please, include this in the letter, because we have the tracks. We know which areas CSX is fighting us on. We know which areas we can push back on. If you want to help reduce the traffic, reduce the accidents, reduce speeding, because I drive 270 every day, twice a day. I know exactly all these places. I am a redneck. I grew up here. I used to ride my horse over at 15. Back when truckers were nice and friendly with honker horns. So, yes, I'm a long-time native. I've seen the horrible things happen on highways. I've seen the horrible things on the roads. So I ask you gentlemen on the stage, please, if you want things that slow down, thin out, because the emergency vehicles had a hard time making it through past Rosemont gas station alone. Please help us get some people into trains or other means of public transportation so we can free up some of the roads for emergency vehicles to make it through to emergencies. Because every second matters when a person has a heart attack. Every second matters when there's a fire. And every second matters in everybody's life here. Please. We're having a meeting at Brunswick Tuesday. Be there. Hi there, I'm going to follow up Chief Coe. Again, I'm a resident of Schley Avenue. Right after that happened, I rushed out to my backyard. There were fire and smoke and everything happening very close to my house. I had no idea what was burning. I had no idea what was going on. Out in front of my house was a parking lot. And I would like to see that when things like that happen, when you're in a panic, you don't think, oh, no news is good news. It would be, I think, very appropriate to send out a flash saying, hey, it's okay to breathe the air. It's, because, again, I told my son, go get your clothes on, grab stuff. I don't know if we're going to be evacuated or not. I never heard a word. And so I think, like I said, I think it would be very appropriate to let, especially the people in the neighborhood, know when you're, can't even get out of the driveway, that what's going on.
Yeah, that point's well taken. A little bit of background on exactly how that event played out that day. I mentioned earlier that the initial 911 call was dispatched for the fire department to respond at just about 12 noon. It was 12 and a few seconds. We had a very large initial response. The initial call was for a house fire. The actual house fire was initially reported on Schley Avenue, right, which wasn't the actual location of the fire. So we had reports of 3 different structure fires at the same time as the tanker fire: Schley Avenue, Biggs Avenue, and Apple Avenue. So when I get back to sharing, hey, we absolutely want to provide good, credible information, it took us a fair bit of time to wrap our arms around the incident to really get a scope of where it was at. The fire that was emanating from behind your house was from the State Highway Association's storm drain system, where it dumps out on the southbound side, and there was smoke and fire that was coming out of those discharge pipes. So I don't discount the desire for more information to come out quicker. The most important thing to know is that we want to put out information as quick as we can that's credible, right? We don't want to put out what we assume or rumors. You could see on social media some of the crazy assumptions that were assumed that were going on. So when we put it out, we want it to be credible, we want it to be actionable, right? If we need you to do something, we're going to tell the public what to do. So the first critical minutes of that incident, we were wrapping our arms around it, understanding where the true emergency was, and most importantly, where it was going. Because we were actually chasing fire down the storm drain system along Route 15 to Schifferstadt. So all the points about public communication are well received. It's definitely something that we evaluate after every incident to see how we can improve on that. But we definitely want to make sure the information we put out is credible, and if we need it to be actionable, that we give clear direction. So understand that in the absence of an evacuation order, you're wondering what to do. Know that in this case, it was because we didn't need you to go anywhere, but I know that that was still a looming curiosity for you. So know that we take that information to heart, and we're continuing to improve our public outreach and communication speed.
Hi, my name is Tyler Crutchfield. I don't live in Frederick, but I traverse 15 regularly, and I think personally, one of the things that needs to be addressed on 15 is the fact that there's no emergency cut-throughs from one side of the highway to the other. In order to get from northbound to southbound or vice versa, you have to go off of the highway, cut across one of the side streets, and then come back onto the exit, going whichever direction you want to go. I would just like to know if in the program, that the 2026 rebuild, if that would be one of the things included in the rebuild. I think that's fairly important, and it also would help mitigate if law enforcement was able to sit in the median and monitor speeding and traffic and such, especially speeding, because 55 miles an hour is not the speed that people go on 15. It's usually 75, and if you're not going 75, you do get passed, and sometimes it's on those areas of the shoulder where it can lead to severe accidents. So I just wanted to know if that was part of the plan.
No, thank you.
It's all off.
No, thank you for that. That's something we can definitely take a look at. The design's still coming together, right? So the widening will take place in the median. We'll really have to see how much of that median is then left over to be able to accommodate such a crossover. And really one reason why they're not as prevalent through the city of Frederick is because the interchange they're so closely spaced together to allow opportunities to turn around. We do work with our friends in emergency management and police when we work on some of the corridor projects to look at opportunities to introduce new emergency crossovers or enhance them as well. But thank you for that.
Oh, yes, my name is Lamar Reese. My yard backs up to 15 of Wingate Avenue, and we are part of your feasibility study, actually. Your crew has been in my backyard 3 times in the last 15 years to check the noise level. We've asked constantly, hey, what did you find? And we're told we're not allowed to have that information. Why? Why can't I get the sound level that's been measured in my backyard from your people?
No, if you can connect with one of us or one of my staff can connect with you here during the meeting. If there's been studies done in your backyard before, you have every right to that data. Maybe the people on site might have been consultants for State Highway, they weren't permitted to share it on State Highway's behalf, but if there's data that was measurements in your property, then you have, by all means, you have the rights to see that, so we can get that to you.
We asked those, we went to the meeting that's been mentioned before at Urbana. There was a meeting at Urbana about the expansion plan, TJ High School. So we've been to several meetings about this road expansion, which is another question. Exactly when will the wall be built? I keep it 26, 28, feasibility study. What is the actual date construction will start on the wall?
The design's still coming together, so I can't say for sure on the sequence of construction, but the project itself is slated to start construction in late 2025, most likely in the May construction season in 2026.
Will that start at?
So we'll have, what we're working towards right now is what we call preliminary investigation. It's a 30% design that allows us to really lay out kind of the footprint of the improvements, right? And figure out what the impacts are to properties, to utilities, to environmental assets. And at some point after that, I have a note for myself to check with our project team. There will be some public outreach once we get to 30%, once we get a handle on kind of how the design is taking shape to get your all's input.
Speaking of utilities, the main gas line into my development comes through my yard, which backs up to 15. What am I to do with the truck overturns in my yard and catches fire with that gas line coming through? What should I do? Wait for the wall, call you guys?
I can't comment on the gas line. I mean, I'm sure it's buried at certain depths to protect it from that kind of situation, but I can't comment on.
Who do I need to find out? I want to find out today that
Washington Gas Company would be the best person to contact for that, yes.
So fire department.
So we would defer to the public utility to actually locate the gas line and tell you the depth of it. Obviously, they have that record. From an emergency response standpoint, it's definitely something you want to be aware of if it's on your property. And obviously, we're going to be coming to help you out in the event of an emergency there.
I'll be waiting.
You won't be waiting long. We come fast.
Well, also, the last one is not a question. But I want to invite the city elected officials to come to my backyard on Saturday afternoon, or any day for that matter, and hear what I hear. I cut my grass with a gas lawnmower, push more, and I can't hear it over the traffic noise. So please, come over. Hear for yourself.
15 Panama Back Road.
I have a question. I don't live in Frederick, but I come to Frederick every solid dairy day.
Ma'am, can you step near the mic?
And
Closer.
I can tell you, 15, you get cut off every solitary day, people coming off the next agreements. My question is, I hear you all talking about putting up a guardrail. I hear you talking about putting up a wall in 2025. Why don't you do like Montgomery County did? Buy those houses, give them the money for those houses. That gives you plenty of room to expand the road. I don't understand why it has not even been brought up. You could buy those houses. They've done it numerous times in Montgomery County, on George Avenue, in Wheaton, Maryland. They bought them. They expanded the road. This would solve a lot of the problems on Route 15.
Do we have any additional questions or comments from the audience?
What's the planned height for the sound barrier above road level?
I don't have that information offhand, but I can get you, we find the best way to kind of reach out with some questions. I can get some kind of approximate heights of typical noise barrier to expect. Best I can say is, I know there's several locations in Howard County along like I-95, around 100, be similar to that. But I can go back and kind of get some data on what to expect in terms of height.
So we'll take into account the fact that most exhaust pipes on tractor trailers are 12 to 13 feet off the ground, and they point at a 45 to 90 degree angle off to the sides. It'll take all that into account.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it looks at the elevation of the road in relation to the height of vehicles, and also the elevation of the properties relative to the road when they design them. So yes.
And I know there's talk of sound barriers this time. 30 years ago, there was a petition going around Biggs Avenue neighborhood about sound barriers for safety reasons and for noise reasons. About 10 years after that, we got a guardrail. And I honestly believe that someone said, how do we make this go away? Give them a guardrail. I think that's what happened. Because here, 20 years later, we're still talking about a wall because it takes what it takes, right? The squeaky wheel gets the grease. Somebody has to die. There has to be a tragic fire for us to have a meeting like this again, and now we're talking about walls. Now, I believe this time the walls are happening, but don't give us the bare minimum. Go above and beyond what we deserve. We pay taxes, we pay county taxes, we pay city taxes. And yes, we choose to live in that area, but we still deserve a good quality of life. So, thanks for being
Yeah, yes, sir. Thank you for the comments. And, the project for 15 was fully funded in the fall of 2022, and that's after years and years of support by our county and city elected officials. So we're looking forward to making it better for everybody.
So for the sake of time, Eric's question will be the last question for our Q&A session, but anyone is welcome to follow up with panelists and receive information at the end of the session. Eric, you have the floor.
Thank you. My name's Eric Jones.
You might have to raise the mic a little, or remove it.
Eric Jones. I live on Color Avenue, and obviously in close proximity to our events. I'm really glad to see everybody here. But it's so unfortunate that these events have finally led to what I think is a productive conversation. Those plans may have been in the works, for years. And, anyone that's lived in the neighborhood has always been the problem. These houses are really close to the road. There's something was missed along the way. And this happens, in development that, as plans are made and dirt gets moved. Not everything that really gets fully envisioned in the plan or is delivered. And so, it's been part of our neighborhood, and we live with it. What my question is that I imagine there's some form of design standard that our highway designers traffic safety that we reference and refer to that have guidelines to say, in this type of situation, these are your remediations that you should be using when possible. And if you have these standards, I'd be curious to know what they are, so I can look them up, just enjoyment, reference, and to hopefully hold these plans accountable as they're being built to these standards.
Yeah, sure. We have a multitude of both federal and state standards we follow for design and traffic safety, and be happy to shoot some of those to you. Most of them are available online if you want to get us your email address, and so you can take a look.
So many agencies collaborated to make this forum possible today. Thank you to Frederick County government. Their communications, emergency management, and Office of the County Executive teams came together along with the Sheriff's Department, Maryland State Police, State Highway Administration, Frederick Police Department, and Maryland Department of the Environment to put together this event. Thank you for joining us as we work to collectively recover as a community, and have a good evening.
Enjoy the show.